Schools of thought in second language acquisition. Differing viewpoints emerge from equally knowledgeable scholars, yet with all the possible disagreements among applied linguists and SLA researchers, some historical pattern emerge that highlight trends and fashions in the study of second language acquisition. You have seen that in terms of developing teaching methodologies or approaches, factors, many researchers have shown their findings specific to different approaches, different theories. Now, different viewpoints have made the task of the concrete understanding of second language acquisition very complex for a layman or for the second language learners. Reason is that different schools of thought have proposed different theories, and based on these different theories, people have conducted experiments or conducted experimental studies and again came up with varied findings or different findings. So due to the diversity in their findings and the ability not to be able to address specific problem in totality has caused a lot of confusion, and also it has given a way or paved a way for the contemporary researchers to conduct more work in this area and propose findings. Before we actually talk about the contemporary models that we have, let's have, or you can say, have a recap of the classical or the old theories that have been there, and also how these different schools of thought have emerged and proposed multiple findings with regard to their specific theories. Let's discuss some of these theories in the light of their views, in the light of their findings. The first is structural linguistics and behavioral psychology. Now, in the decade of 1960s, generative transformational linguistics emerged through the influence of Noam Chomsky and a number of his followers. Chomsky was trying to show that human language cannot be scrutinized simply in terms of observable stimuli and response. And that was what was proposed by the behaviorist school of thought, that the language is basic phenomena of stimuli response or reinforcement from the social environment. Chomsky discussed that the generative linguist was interested not only in describing language but also in arriving at an explanatory level of adequacy in the study of language, that is, a principled basis, independent of particular language, for the selection of descriptively adequate grammar of each language. Now, early we saw that transformational revolution began in the 20th century. Ferdinand de Saussure claimed that there was a difference between parole, that is what Skinner observes and Chomsky called performance, and on the other hand Lang, which is the competence and unobservable language ability, a linguistic ability. A few decades later, however, descriptive linguists chose largely to ignore Lang and the study of parole. Cognitive psychologists asserted that meaning, understanding and knowing were significant data, enough data for psychological study. Instead of focusing rather mechanistically on stimulus response, cognitivists tried to discover psychological principles of organization and functioning. They, like generative linguists, sought to discover underlying motivation and deep structures of human behavior by using a rational approach. That is, they freed themselves from the strictly empirical study typical of behaviorists and employed the tool of logic, reason, extrapolation, and inference in order to drive explanation for human behavior. Constructivism, a multidisciplinary approach, and it is hardly a new school of thought. We have people, the name that we have is Jean Piaget and Vygotsky. They are often associated with this school of thought, which is constructivism. Now, what is constructivism and how does it differ from the other viewpoints? Now, first, it's helpful to think of these two branches of this particular school of thought as cognitive and social both. So, when we talk about cognitive, it is connected to Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development, and when we talk about social, it is connected to Vygotsky's theory of social and cultural theory of Vygotsky. So now, after this constructivism, which basically deals with the construction of language, we see that the communicative teaching or the communicative language teaching draws its basis from this particular approach. So, all three of the historical positions, structural, behavioral, generative, cognitive, and constructivist, must be seen as important in creating balanced description of second language learning.